Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining another episode of Behind the Scenes, where I get to sit down with a lot of interesting people. Today, I am joined by Liron Eizenman, the Chief Operating Officer of Silicom, one of the leading hardware manufacturers in the world. Liron, thanks for joining us today. Really excited for the conversation. For our viewers that haven't met you or know about yourself or Silicom, can you take a moment and just tell us a little bit about you, Silicom, and your background?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me today, Chris. And so I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Silicom. Silicom has been around for more than 30 years. We're a public company traded on the NASDAQ. And our expertise is hardware, as you said, but we also do a little bit more than that. But maybe we'll talk about it later on today. Me personally, I joined Silicom 5 years ago as the president of the Edge Networking division. Since then, I transitioned to the role of Chief Operating Officer. And basically, I've been around technology my whole life. I've been programming since I was a kid. I started in software, did my degree as well in software, worked in a few startups, worked in Microsoft, and found myself in Silicom about 5 years ago. And I don't think that I'll transition anywhere soon. So I plan to be here for quite a while, working with you, obviously. And that's very briefly.
Well, I tell you, I hope we continue to work. And if the pandemic lifts and we get to meet back up, I hope we play tennis, because for the folks that don't know this, obviously I'm a huge advocate of tennis. You are passionate about the sport as well. Sometimes our picks for who's going to win championships don't necessarily match up. But I always like our conversations about who's going to win what. Now, I would like to see Federer come back and have a really good 2021, and keep his record there. That would be really nice. But back to this conversation. So it's interesting, though, the software side of it, startup side of it. Now you're effectively running a publicly traded company. How does that differ? And then also, given we're in the SD-WAN world, how have you seen the market transition from the conventional hardware-based solutions to now this whole, cloud-based VNF market that, Gartner's saying is just continually growing, is going to be a phenomenal growth path till 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, so, the trends that we're seeing in the market in the last several years, especially the disaggregation between hardware and software, is huge, right? We see it all around. Yep. We see it in the edge, but we also see it in the core of the network as well. And in all of those areas, Silicom is able to play. As we know, in the SD-WAN market, together we are working with Versa. We are a hardware vendor for Versa. We carry several of their boxes. I can give you a little news here that you're hearing for the first time. We just qualified another box with Versa. We can talk about it a little later on. And awesome. The fact that basically what we can say, the food chain has changed a little bit. For us, Silicom, we're working, or many other hardware vendors, due to the reason that many telecom providers and big enterprises wants to decouple the software from the hardware, actually puts us in a position that we need to understand more about what they're doing, meaning that we need to get out of the hardware only, understand at least what are the software implications, being able to support the software teams better. And I think that is where Silicom is playing a really important part, because we do not bring only hardware to the game. We bring a lot of software expertise. For me personally, I can say that I've been as a software engineer and software engineering manager for more than 15 years. I think that bringing both hardware and software expertise to the game, and we have much more talented guys than me in the team, we were able to understand this world better and understand what really is disaggregation means, and how we can support those companies who wants to adopt this method and try to be more focused on, let's decouple, let's take the best software in the world, let's take the best hardware in the world. It may not come from the same vendor, but we need them to work good together. And I think that is the part of we're seeing in the last several years.
And over the last 5 years, though, do you think that that's been more of a conscious effort by your leadership to have more of a software forward approach, knowing that hardware white box is going to be a deployment mechanism? Because I am curious to know, is that something that you brought from your experience from a software background? to now being part of the manufacturing on a hardware based? Because a lot of manufacturers see it as, hey, we're hardware, you're software. And I've always valued that you take the shoulder to shoulder approach where you're understanding the downstream mechanics of deploying out a service and knowing that you're a component of it. So I'm just curious, is that consciously done? And is that based on the background you have from a software background?
So Silicom in general, I would say, our methodology all the years have been, we don't care where is the problem. We're not looking for someone to blame. Let's solve it together. And I think as being in this approach, we have been doing software many years still as a hardware vendor, but we have been doing software and helping our customers much more than what you would call the standard hardware vendor would do. And I think that got even more stronger in the last several years. I mean, then customers are actually looking for that. Maybe several years ago, we would approach and ask and try to see if we can help. I think those days, vendors are helping in that. I mean, one example would be, okay, we know in our boxes that we also integrate Wi-Fi and LTE. We need to do special carrier certification for Verizon and AT&T so our equipment can run on that. That is something that we need to pick up, we need to orchestrate, we need to work with the software vendors. But at the end of the day, it's the Silicom box that needs to be certified, which means that it's on
Right.
us. That's just one example. There's many similar examples on how we work together with taking software packages from Intel and productizing them. There's a lot of things that we're doing around software, but this is, again, one aspect. Still, for us, the product is hardware. We manufacture hardware, we design hardware with the best in the market to do that, but we know that in many cases, the software needs to come in and play with it.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear that. And when you think of SD-WAN, because look, that's where we're in. It's the growing market. You got this whole virtual network functions going on, consolidation with hardware and software, and all the excitement and buzz. But what is your thoughts on SD-WAN, and how is Silicom becoming more strategic in that market with not just Versa and the other technologies there, but how are you trying to position Silicom into that market?
So first of all, SD-WAN, I would say, is, and looking at Gartner and looking at all the revenues projection, this is already a huge market. Not only it's going to be even bigger, but it's a huge market right now. There are some other markets in those areas, the SD-WAN, NFV, which are getting there, but SD-WAN is now, it's here, it's happening. We see all the acquisitions. It's huge already. And we are already providing hardware to many of those companies that we're familiar with. We cannot give names right now, but obviously there's a lot with Versa, as we know, but also with others. And from our perspective, it means a few things. First of all, with SD-WAN, there's huge sensitivity to the cost. And we need to do smart designs in the sense that they will be very cost effective. And we have done many of those in the past and still are doing. And we are working very closely with Intel. Intel has been a partner of ours for many years, and not only building designs on them, but actually we're doing the reference design. So they come to us and say, okay, we have a new CPU. Let's do a project together. In many cases, we're the first to run into problems. So we come to the market with a very mature project. We really understand the in and out and all of the things that are happening in the CPU. We are doing optimizations to the memory, to the storage, to everything. So we come with a very smart design in the sense of cost, as well as obviously reliability and quality. That's the first thing. Second, we understand that in today's market, supply chain has changed a little bit. It's not only now that we sell to OEMs and then they will sell to the telcos or to, let's say, VARs or to big enterprises. Sometimes those guys come to us directly, which means that we needed to adapt our supply chain to those guys. That means that we need to be able to support different countries around the world. We need to know how to ship to them, how to receive defective material back to us, fix it, ship again. All of that has changed, and we really needed to adapt to that over the last several years. And that includes, and a sub item of that would be certifications. I mean, as we know together, we have projects where you're using LTE connectivity to the Verizon wireless network. Being able to run on the Verizon wireless network is not just plug and play. You need to go through a really, really long period of testing in order to make sure that you're not harming the network. This is not standard. So all of that together, I think, is putting Silicom in a place that we are able to really support those customers. And as we know, I mean, when those companies are adapting as well, I mean, the telcos of the world, the big enterprises, they used to work with customers who would give them a full solution. If you look at the Ciscos of the world, they would, or Junipers of the world, they get hardware, software, support, everything. Now they want to decouple. On the one side, that's great. On the other side, it's creating challenges, and they're looking at us to provide the answers. So that really put Silicom in a situation that we need to adapt, and we've done it. And I think we're showing it with the customer base that we have right now for the SD-WAN.
Well, I just want, for viewers that are seeing this, I mean, you touched on a lot of different components that, you know, a lot of times we just, and I love the whole plug and play notion, and in SD-WAN, everybody goes, well, just ZTP it, right? You know, forget about all the blocking and tackling that goes into it. We'll just ZTP. And if you got ZTP on the list, you know, it's just going to work. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that everything is seamless. But you touched on supply chain. And there's a lot of different external variables that are always coming across your plate that I could imagine, from tariffs to, you know, local municipalities, the shipping, logistics. I mean, and there's just so much stuff that's happening. Can you explain a little bit more of, you know, what comes across your desk, and then how do you make those corrective actions, whether it's, you know, the U.S. passes a new tariff and now you have to think about where the manufacturing is happening, because those are all different things that when a service provider is saying, hey, I need some boxes, I need some white boxes to be sent, they're just going to place a PO and say, I need it here. But there's a lot of different things that are happening there. How do you quantify the different things going on and then make those corrective actions?
Well, I think that indeed, I mean, a lot have happened in the last several years. If we're talking about the tariffs that started in the US several years ago, COVID, which was not a blast, I would say, at least not in Q1 of this year for supply chain. Still, it's impacting a little bit, but not dramatically. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality of us as a hardware company. I mean, it means that some of the items that we need in order to build products has gone to a lead time of 30 weeks. If you add manufacturing time after that, you're getting to 7-8 months to get a product. No one will wait that time. That means that we need to be smarter. We need to fill the market at all times. We need to understand when certain materials become constrained on resources right now, and maybe we need to order more, or something is getting longer. Maybe we should increase our safety stock. But luckily, this is something that Silicom has been doing for 30 years. So on some aspect, this is our regular work. That being said, there's been a few, I would say, extremes, COVID being one of them, and the tariffs. So I can touch on those two. So tariffs, when the tariffs started, we were manufacturing in China, and we felt two things happening. First, we knew that tariffs are not, will last longer. I mean, no one, I know that many people thought, okay, 2-3 months, they'll negotiate. Well, it's still here, right? And we're a few years later. And we decided at the moment we said, okay, if that is the spirit, that means that in a few years, companies in the US will not, and maybe Europe as well, if they will follow, will not, even if the tariffs will go away, they do not want to work in manufacturing in China anymore. There's something big going on behind it. We should understand it, especially when you're trying to sell equipment to telecommunications, which we know this is the heart of all the. I mean, they will not accept, just like we're looking and seeing Huawei right now being banned anywhere. So we at that point decided that we will transition our manufacturing out of China, and we did so. And today we're not manufacturing in China anymore. We're manufacturing in Israel, manufacturing in the Philippines, we're manufacturing in other places in Europe as well, but we do not have a manufacturing location in China those days. And that has been, I mean, obviously people looked at us at this time and think, hey guys, cool down, it will go away. And we said, doesn't matter. We need to adapt to something new that is coming, and we made a decision that it's going to happen. And 6 months later, we were able to successfully do this transition. And the other thing we touched upon is COVID. So COVID definitely in Q1 of this year, where China just suddenly completely shut down, and still, I mean, certain components are coming from there, but not all of them. And then a month or 2 months later, the rest of the world pretty much shut down, and people would not come to work, and factories were completely empty at a certain point. That was problematic for the Q1 of the year, but overall, we're not feeling a decrease in the business. I mean, certain areas growing, everything related to work from home is obviously booming up. Some things which are more related to the main branch are maybe decreasing, but Silicom as a company, we do not see significant impact, let's say, on the long-term sales right now, at least right now. This is right. So things got pushed out a little bit from Q1 to Q2, but overall, we managed to close the gap. We took a lot of steps to increase our inventory levels in the sense that we will be able to cope if something happens. Eventually, by the way, nothing major happened later on. I hope it will not happen because, COVID is still with us.
Right.
But I hope it will not have a significant impact. Right now, we feel very strong in the supply chain, and we do not have any problems supplying our customers with the products they need.
Well, I love that first off, thank you for explaining that. And I hope a lot of our viewers found value in that, understanding all the different complexities that get into when you just unwrap a box there. There's a tremendous amount that goes on behind the scenes, and there's plenty of challenges from forecasting and cutting the lead times down. And then you've got the governmental aspects of it. And then, by the way, the components that go into the box, and that can be related to 10 other things that are outside of your reach. So your ability to have the foresight into what's going on there, I'll just say from a personal experience, it's been positive. Another thing is that, from a replacement aspect, this is always something that I felt was more of a differentiator and valuable is you said to me once, look, whether it's our fault or not, let's get you something back. Let's get you an appliance back. The RMA is one thing, but service needs to continue. And as we obviously sell to service providers and MSPs and have strategic downstream distribution model, just something like that, which was put the customer first, was really important from a relationship standpoint. So I wanted to mention that on today's call so that folks heard that, because I do think that is a differentiator and goes to the culture of what Silicom is. And as I pivot into culture, what I know is that Shaiki, your CEO, is the hardest working man in probably the entire business. If it wasn't for a pandemic, he's flying, he's meeting customers, yourself, and the team, you're always in front of the valued relationships. And, culturally, that's, I think, been a benefit, at least from my standpoint. It's just built the relationship that we have today. But knowing that you're the COO of a company that is in Israel and globally, and you've got different regions that you support, how have you maintained that type of culture in a world where we're no longer traveling the way that we used to?
Yeah, that is a challenge indeed. I mean, for us as a company who is, I think we are over 4 continents pretty much, if not more than that. We have an R&D team in the US. We also have a logistic location in the US. We have our headquarters in Israel, but we also have a development team in China and in Denmark. So all of that together is definitely creating a challenge. That being said, we are pretty used to working in this spread model for several years now. People do travel. I personally would travel quite a lot to our R&D in Virginia, and many of our people would travel to Denmark as well. So I think on some aspects, we were already used to that to some extent. We were not this company just located in one place. Everyone would see everyone, hallway discussions. That's the only way they communicate. No, we were different than that to begin with. But still, we all felt when COVID started that we are in much more meetings than we used to be. I guess you had this feeling. Everyone was talking about it. And indeed, in some cases, instead of having 5 minutes hallway discussion, it became a 30 minutes Zoom or Teams discussion with 6 people instead of 2. So there's been some adjusting, and I think that over the first few months, we also understood how to do it better, how to make sure that we're not wasting people's time, that we're only calling the right people to the right discussion. And one thing that I felt, at least initially, was that at least when everyone was at a stay-at-home kind of situation, was that family and work is mixing. It's very hard to distinguish between the two.
Yeah.
I think also understood that we need to respect that. Some people, just like me, has small kids, so during day hours it's a little bit harder, so we make up at night for that, but some others are different. So maybe for me, calls at 11 p.m. is great, maybe not for everyone. So we learned how to do it better and how to adjust. But overall, I feel that we all share the same goal, and Silicom is a company that I would say ego-free or almost ego-free as much as it can be. And I think people are just really trying to do the best. And by the way, in Israel, we are back to the office, so it's helping. I know that our team in Virginia is coming to the office a lot as well. Not mandatory, everyone chooses his own based on what his needs are, but I think overall we are in a very good situation right now. But I do hope that I will be able to travel again. I mean, there's nothing like a face-to-face.
Yep. Well, we hope to have you back here. And I like that you touched on the personal aspect, an element that's happening here, because you're exactly right. I mean, the demarc between personal and work life has definitely been a challenge, whether from a family standpoint or just in general of not knowing when to turn off. And I felt the same thing, quite honestly, where you're not sure where the lines are because the commutes are gone. You have more time, let's say, to focus there. But the other thing that you touched on, which is interesting, is there was a lot more meetings, a lot more video conferences, and a little bit, I would say, is more of that busy work type thing. So it's interesting that you said, well, look, let's see what needs to be held and what doesn't. So we're not creating, just calls to have calls. And I've heard from a lot of people that, there was that in the early days. Everybody was scheduling meetings. And I don't know if that was, creating more of that, hey, let me show you I'm working and let's have those calls. And now it's settled into, this is just how we operate. But it's interesting that you brought those two things up. So, Liron, well, I still have you. A couple more questions. You're COO, you're in Israel, you're running Silicom. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, that's first of all, my daughter. She's 1 year old, so that's the first thing. No, but more seriously, I mean, I think that the thing that led Silicom for many years, and maybe it sounds like a cliche, but I mean, you know what? I'll say it differently. About 2 years ago, Silicom celebrated 25 years to being traded on the Nasdaq. And Shaike stood in the Nasdaq studio. I was standing next to him, and he said that the first thing he wanted to say is that he would like to thank our customers. And I think that this idea of putting the customer in the first place and making sure that the customer is happy and really understanding the needs of the customers is what keeps us up at night, making sure that we're doing the right things for the customer, that we're helping them be successful, because we know that if they'll be successful, we will be. But obviously there's other things always with the supply chain and everything else. But I think for us, it's something that we know how to cope with. We cope with so many things over the last 30 years. And we have so many employees who've been working with Silicom for 25 years and above. So they've seen so much. They know so good how to activate this system, which is called Silicom. So I feel confident, but as always, I have to worry, right? If you want to survive, you need to be scared about what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's also fine. But first of all, as I said, and this is the first thing, the customers, making sure that we're doing the right things for our customers.
Well, that is definitely a good approach to take, and I share your thoughts of what is on the mind. Well, let's make sure the customers are okay. And then for me, it's always, are the employees okay? Because the team will take care of the customers and everybody else. So we're always thinking the same way there. Last question for you. If you overheard the market speaking, what would you like them to say about you?
that I'm doing everything so they will be successful. I mean, again, for us, so many different things are needed by so many different customers. It's not only about supplying on time. Supply on time could be one, but at some point, maybe it will help to tackle some logistic challenge. Sometimes it will be to tackle a software challenge. Sometimes it will be to find, a solution for one customer they care about, which will be maybe really small business for us. But that's what they need us to do. So we will do that for them. If the partnership is strong and if both of us see, let's say, ourselves married and going together for many, many years, we will do even things that sometimes are against what you would think makes sense. But this is what they need. This is what we do. So I hope that the market will say about us what we're trying to project.
Well, I think that you are, and it's been fantastic to have the relationship. Last question, am I the best strategic partner to work with? And keep in mind, I may have to edit this video depending on your answer.
Absolutely, Chris.
Great answer. Everybody, thanks again for watching. This is another episode of Behind the Scenes. Again, that was Liron Eizenman, the Chief Operating Officer of Silicom. We have a great relationship with them. It's always phenomenal talking with you. Folks listening, if you don't know Liron, now you do. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chris.